beautiful earthlings, welcome back. I'm Chelsea J. Bear. So I'm really excited about today's video. I'm going to go over what exactly channeling is. I know there's so much information out there on the interwebs. The reason behind this video is when I first started channeling, I had no idea I was channeling. It just didn't occur to me that I was doing the same thing as, say, Esther Hicks or Abraham Hicks. And I think it's because in the spiritual community, and this isn't wrong, but there's a lot of that sort of vocabulary, or, it's like, this was channeled through me. And that's totally correct. But I thought when someone said like, oh, I channeled this, I don't know, it's kind of confusing. But back then I just thought, oh, it's just when like energy's flowing through you into a project or something, which again is not wrong. But often when I'm talking about channeling, I'm talking about this specific sort of definition. So I'm going to get into that today. I'm going to talk about what channeling is exactly, how I channel, and I'm also going to go over something that's really important to know in regards to channeling, actually in regards to receiving information from the spiritual realm in any capacity. So whether you're an intuitive, a psychic, a medium, all of the above, Reiki healer, a channeler like I am, this is something that's really important to know that I'm going to go over at the end of the translation process. So let's get into the goods. In case you were like me back in the day where it's kind of unclear of what exactly channeling is, let's go over exactly what channeling is and what happens during that process. So channeling is when a person or human serves as a vessel or medium through which the consciousness of a higher entity can come down or flow down into our physical earthly realm. It's essentially a communication and translation process between an earthling and a higher consciousness. So to kind of condense that down, channeling is the process of translating messages from a higher consciousness that exists outside our 3D realm. So when I'm channeling, I am acting or serving as a vessel. So my physical body is kind of like this satellite through which the messages or guidance or frequency of a higher entity, so a light being, angels, archangels, aliens, all these beautiful light entities that exist outside our 3D frame of reference. I act as a channel, vessel, satellite, whatever you want to call it, for the translation process of those messages to come down. So they're coming down from the divine into the physical. So I like to think of myself almost as like a cosmic translator, blurring the lines between this physical realm and everything outside of this physical realm. And so the reason why I say I'm kind of like a satellite, it's almost like we're tuning the frequency of a radio. So the messages that are being broadcasted by these higher dimensionals, these light beings, they are vibrating at a very high or different frequency and oscillation than what we're kind of dealing with here down on Earth. And so often we can't hear these messages or see them or experience them firsthand unless we raise our frequency to match the frequency of the messages coming through. Well, stumbling over my words already, like I was doing so good. I was like, yes, I'm just getting the words out, but I'm human. Like honestly, can't talk. It was bound to happen sometimes. So getting back to what we're talking about. So I like to believe that we are all channels of the divine in our own way. If you identify as a channeler, what is actually happening, so like I identify as a channeler, I am setting aside my consciousness, my ego self, and allowing the consciousness of a higher entity to speak or share through me. So that's essentially what a channeler is. But again, if you identify as an intuitive or psychic medium, or you practice Reiki, whatever your mode of translating the divine is, we are all channels. So in our own special way, we are all vessels of this translation process. We are all satellites for the divine. There's just different variations of how those messages can come down and come through. And so what I do to prepare for these messages to come through, it's, if I'm kind of having a bad day and I'm like really stuck in my egoic self and I'm judging and criticizing like, hey, we're human, it's going to be a little more challenging for me to sort of tune my radio, my satellite station to match the frequency of the higher entities I want to connect with and share their messages. So that's why it's so important. The clarity of our channel is our responsibility. If I'm out there just being a wild human and not really taking the time to clear and elevate my channel, then the messages will have a harder time coming through, or the translation process might not be as clear. And so I'm going to get into that translation process in a bit here. But maybe you're wondering, okay, so why do we even have channels? Do we need to receive messages from higher entities? Earth was basically plastered in a veil of amnesia. We come down to Earth. We as souls choose to come to Earth to experience the growth and the lessons and all the denseness of it. This is by choice. Earth is kind of like a school. It's not essentially paradise, but that's kind of what we're working towards as a collective. And so Earth's really challenging. We have the cancer experience, we have the hunger experience, we have death, we have heartbreak, we have all these things that are related to physicality that make being a human really challenging. But on the opposite side, we have deep and profound beauty. And so since as souls, we come here to learn and grow, we have higher entities, higher dimensionals, angels, archangels, aliens, light beings, ETs, whatever you like to call them, as sort of guides standing on the sideline to help us. They're not going to do the hard work for us, but they're kind of like our mentors, our cosmic mentors for Earth. And so some of us, myself included, chose to come down to Earth to act as channels to help relay these messages that will make living on Earth a little bit easier. So they like to give us puzzle pieces, they like to give us breadcrumbs. They rarely ever give us the whole damn map of how we're supposed to go down this journey of living on Earth. But that's sort of the main reason from my perspective of why we have people who are highly psychic, highly intuitive, who practice as mediums, who practice as channelers. And it goes without saying we're all intuitive, and I have a firm belief that we can all connect with the ETs. It's kind of like playing soccer. We can all kick a soccer ball. Are we all going to go off and be pro? Probably not. So, the gifts will vary. It really is up to you to figure out how your gifts shine the best that they shine. But that is why we have Earth was created with this veil of amnesia on purpose, because if we remembered everything outside of Earth, we would know the profoundness of universal oneness and pure love and everything that is very much a fifth dimensional reality. We came down here to live in 3D, to heal through 3D, to grow in this very dense reality. So that's why we have the veil of amnesia, and to make things easier, that's why we also have cosmic guides who we can channel or receive guidance and communication from. Okay, so something really important to be known about acting as a channeler, and really anyone that is receiving guidance, whether from your spirit guides or cosmic guides, angels, archangels, fairies, elementals, you name it. No matter what, this is going to occur. We are each a channel, we are each a vessel, a satellite for the divine to flow through us, but we each have our own set of perspectives and beliefs. And so when the channeling process occurs, the message coming down goes through our perspective and our beliefs. This is why it's really important to practice setting the consciousness or your ego self aside, because you could project your own beliefs or perspectives onto the message being translated. This will always happen to some extent, but that's part of the practice. For me personally, is learning how to set my consciousness or my views aside and be very aware when I am projecting my own beliefs. It's a work in progress. It can't be perfect. So let it be known that the messages will rarely ever be perfectly translated. Another reason for this is the perspective. Oh my God, I almost stumbled on my words again. The perspective of these higher dimensionals is vastly different than our perspective here in 3D. So even the message is coming from a higher perspective, from an entity who has their own set of perspectives and their own set of beliefs. So I always say in sessions, the light beings, their word is not bond. They are still individuals to an extent, or they're still, even the collective still has its own set of perspective and beliefs. So it's like we're filtering through different layers. This is just the part of it. But that's why I always say practice discernment. Do your due diligence when it comes to listening to anyone, myself included. Every single person who channels or shares channeled guidance that message was filtered through their belief system, without a doubt. I would say the only individual that I've seen where you can kind of get closer to the message being shared is Ra. And that's because the woman who's translating or channeling has two people with her to help with the holding down the frequency. I think they say that. So I would say Ra is pretty close to the message being shared, is as close as possible to the original message. And when you read that, you can tell because it's very non-human. It's like, often you're like, what did I just read? So this is just part of that. And it's something we all need to be aware of when sharing guidance. And it's something we all need to be aware of when receiving guidance. And so again, it's why I tell my clients, like, if you don't vibe with this or you're confused, ask questions or say, I don't understand. And that's why we need to use discernment, especially in the spiritual community, when people are sharing anything, whether it's doom and gloom or the end of the world or about this paradise. It's really coming back to our own belief system and saying, does this feel good in my heart space? Does this feel true? And when we do that, it's like you just don't get caught up in everyone else's external beliefs. You're coming back to yourself, and that's so important. It's so valuable. So I want to kind of share an example of how this belief system before we go. So imagine I'm Chelsea, not hard to imagine. If an alien sends me a photo of Santa Claus, I am 100% going to see the fat, jolly Coca-Cola Santa Claus because that was the perspective or belief that I was raised on. If the alien sent a Santa Claus to say someone in Norway or Sweden, the image and perspective they're going to gather is probably going to be a Santa Claus that's more woodsy, probably thinner, not the fat, jolly Coca-Cola Santa Claus. So this is a really good example of how the same message was sent to two separate people, but based on their beliefs, there's a little bit of a translation difference. Does it create a huge difference in the overall frequency of the message? No, message still received. It'll just be slightly different. So that's what I mean by the translation process of what we need to be aware of when these messages are coming through. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I love you so much, and I'll see you next time.